In this video, we'll show you how to change the starter on your Nissan Altima. You can find it on CarParts.com via the link in the description. For safety reasons, we strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Nissan Altima safely. Using a 10mm socket, unscrew the two air intake resonator retaining bolts. Then remove it. To access the starter, you need to remove the battery. To do so, we recommend watching the video, How to Replace the Nissan Altima Car Battery. Using a fork and a flathead screwdriver, remove the two clips holding the harness to the side of the airbox. Take off the connector from the airflow meter by pulling the retaining tab. Using a flathead screwdriver, loosen the holding clip for the air intake duct on the airbox. Then, shift the hole. You can remove the airbox by pulling it towards you and moving it back and forth. Remove the battery container. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 13mm socket, remove the two ECU retaining bolts. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 13mm socket, unscrew the bolt holding the metal bracket of the battery harnesses. Then, shift the hole. Now you need to remove the mudguard. Using a fork, remove the 4 plastic cover retaining rivets. Then, the mudguard retaining rivet. Using a multi-bit screwdriver and a 10mm socket, unscrew the two engine splash shield retaining bolts. You can now pull back the mudguard. You can now access the starter terminals. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 12mm socket, fully unscrew the positive terminal retaining nut. Using a ratchet and an 8mm socket, unscrew the negative terminal retaining nut. Positioning yourself above the engine compartment, you can now access the starter retaining bolts. Using a 14mm wrench, unscrew the first starter retaining bolt. Do the same with the second retaining bolt. You can now remove the starter. The starter may be difficult to remove. You can order the starter used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Take the new starter and put it in its place. Next, screw the two retaining bolts back in. Finish the tightening of the bolts with a torque wrench. Put the positive terminal back on the new starter. Then, screw the retaining nut back in. Put the rubber protection back on. Replace the negative terminal. Then, screw the retaining nut back in. Hey, it's Alex from CarParts.com. For great content, our best price, and fast shipping, download the CarParts.com app now. Replace the mudguard behind the fender. Put the splash shield back in place. And screw it back on. Put the rivet back in place. Replace the plastic cover. Then put the rivets back in place. Then you will be able to put the wheel back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheel in place. Put the ECU back in place and screw it back on. Screw the metal brackets back onto the battery harnesses. Put the battery container back in place. Put the airbox back in place. Then screw the hose clamp back on. Reconnect the airflow meter connector. Then reattach the clips. Put the resonator back in the airbox. Screw the 2 retaining bolts back on. Put the battery back in place. To do so, we recommend watching the video, How to Replace the Nissan Altima Car Battery. Operation complete.
Quality parts, priced right.